State your name, followed by the pound or hash sign. Thank you. To start or join the conference, press 1. You will now be placed in the conference. To mute your line, press *6. To unmute, press #6. After joining the call, to record the conference for those who may miss this call.
Hey, welcome everybody.
Sherry? Press *2.
Where's Miss Sherry? Is Sherry? Okay. Sherry will take a roll call for me, please.
Jeff Swearingen. Patrick Updike.
Here.
Bob Uni.
Here.
Tom Lambie.
Here.
John Benson.
Here.
Bob Van Wolfrat.
Present on phone.
Andy Buffington.
Present on the phone.
Ellen Hagan.
Present.
Deb Craybill. Jason Leonard.
Here.
Ted Kamachis.
Present.
Michael Casper. Carol Lund Smith. Linda Frederickson.
Present.
Kelly Grosskirth. Senator Feenstra. Senator Brace. Representative Kressig. Representative Holt. Craig Allen.
Here.
Helen Taranovich.
Here.
You have quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. We could do the introduction of board members with the people on the phone first, if you would, starting with Robert B.W., please.
Bob Van Wolfrat, State CIO.
Any
Andy
other board?
Buffington with Winnebago Hancock County representing communication centers.
Any other board
Nikki
members?
Whitaker with Public Safety representing Finance Committee.
Okay, Patrick?
Patrick Updike, Iowa Department of Corrections.
Sheriff Ted Kamachis, Marshall County, Iowa, representing the Iowa State Sheriffs and Deputies Association.
Ellen Hagan, Joe Fire and Rescue, representing volunteer firefighters.
Jason Leonard, Waverly Police Department, representing Municipal Police.
Tom Lambie, representing DPS.
Craig Allen, Statewide Interoperability Coordinator.
Linda Frederickson, representing Emergency Medical Services.
Bob Uni, Iowa Department of Transportation.
John Benson, Iowa Homeland Security and Emergency Management.
Our guest, starting with Terry.
Terry Brennan, Raycom.
Wayne Voss, Raycom.
Rob Bennett, Westcom.
Marty Smith, Iowa Department of Public Health.
Blake DeRusha, Homeland Security and Emergency Management. Steve Murray, DPS.
Kevin Condon, Iowa Communications Alliance.
Back to you.
Mike Harvey, Iowa DOT.
Okay. Sherry.
Sherry Schmitz with Motorola.
Melvin Mercado, Project Director.
Iowa Communications Network. Helen Taranovich, Deputy Statewide Interoperability Coordinator.
Phil Bronner, ICN.
Ryan Mohol, ICN.
Bill McCall, Aries, Story County.
Clint Miller, Story County, Aries.
Tom Rice, State Racing Officer.
Josh Altman, DOT, Tracks and Law Coordinator. Curtis Walser, Cedar Rapids Fire and Iowa Task Force 1.
Cindy Fox, DPS Communications.
Doug McCaslin, Warren County 911. Stephen Rodriguez, ISICSB Project Manager.
Jared Green, Iowa DOT.
Vern Long, Lieutenant Sheriff's Office.
Thank you, welcome. Looking forward to the approval of today's agenda, please.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Second, Ted. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approval of the meeting minutes from April 14th. Need a motion for that?
So moved.
John?
Second, Mr. Chair.
Second, Bob. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, Swift report, Mr. Allen.
Good morning. This month was a busy month, but most of the time was spent, unfortunately, not necessarily here in Iowa. I attended a National Council of SWCS meeting in Jacksonville, Florida. We partnered with the SafeCom group. I chair the Technology and Policy Committee for that consortium. And one of the areas that I think will be important to the folks in this meeting room is that the National Council of SWCS and SafeCom have undertaken defining public safety grade in a broader scope than some of the other standards-making bodies that currently exist have considered. And what does that mean? Project 25 has, as you all know, last 2 months ago, I guess, adopted a definition of public safety grade that says if you have public P25 equipment, that by default makes it public safety grade for use on your system. So what's the difference between public safety grade and mission critical? Mission critical was a terminology that had been in a lexicon of terms in public safety for a long time. Mission critical can be any piece of equipment that is used in a mission. So if you go down to Walmart and you grab some family radios at $49.95 a piece or a set and go out to do work with them, then they're considered mission critical because they're part of your mission and they're critical to the effect of carrying out that mission. The challenge is that equipment has places that it can't go. You can't really put it on a firefighter and send it into some place where there's gas in the air that might explode because they're not designed for that and they could cause an explosion. And so as we looked at how do we drive interoperability, one of the best things we can do is to get people into a suite of equipment that is interoperable and will work together on a standards-based environment. And so why is that important? Well, Iowa was one of the first states, actually the first state, to put out a definition broader than the NIPSTIC definition, which was just infrastructure. You know, what should towers be? What should battery backup be? So on. So there's a lot of stuff in the coverage, availability, reliability, security of a system that there isn't a standard for right now. And in discussions at National Council of SWCS and the SafeCom group, they agreed that it made sense at the national level for those two to partner to try and drive that forward. And the reason I brought all that up is that when we look at the existing definitions, the Iowa definition that's posted on our website appears to be the driving force behind the genesis for where they see it as going. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if there isn't a bit of plagiarism perhaps, or at least borrowing some good language from the work that the board did with regard to what that might look like at the national level. So I thought I'd share that with the group. The other thing that's probably consumed, would in the interest of brevity, would be the ISSI meeting that the board approved Tom and I to go to, Chair Lampy and I to go to last month. He approved it. We went to it this week. There was a meeting in Denver. It was hosted by Department of Homeland Security, Office of Emergency Communications. They had an invitation, kind of invitation-only event where they invited in about 16 system users who currently use ISSI or CSSI. And so ISSI is a system interface between two trunked systems. The CSSI is the interface of the dispatch consoles and those systems. And so it's the wire connection, not wireless. The interest that Iowa had is that our platform that we're rolling out has one ISSI switch. We have 7 systems in Iowa. How does it make the most sense to utilize that switch with regard to interoperability as we move forward, or to use it at all? And so the interest that we had in going out there was to learn what are best practices, what's going on, how to best use it. So you've got a whole range of possibilities from being able to take your radio system through that switch and be able to get it onto smartphones so that, you know, investigators or people that are coming into your area could interoperate, down to connecting switches together. So what did we learn at the meeting? What we learned is that they're software driven. The platforms have to be at the same level of software upgrade, or the ISSI switch isn't as elegant as it could be. Information may not pass as well from one side to the other. And when I say information, things like alarms, alerts. So if you've got a system that's brand X and it is at version 1.0 and you've got brand Y that's at 3.5, there's feature sets and capacity and issues that just may not work as elegantly as we would like them to. So as we begin to look at how Iowa interoperates with, candidly, the latest, greatest platform in the country. I mean, it's the last statewide system that's been awarded to my knowledge. It's 700 megahertz TDMA. And so how do we then interface with some other legacy equipment that we've got in Iowa, or do we? And that's part of what that meeting was about. I can tell you that from my perspective, and I'm certainly going to ask the chair to comment here in a minute, we came back better prepared to ask questions, and I'm not sure that we came away with as many answers as maybe we thought we would come away with going out there, but we went from perhaps not as competent in that area and came back a little more competent in that area and able to ask a better set of questions. I left there, I didn't get out of there until about 8 o'clock last night in Denver, and the conversations that came out of there was that the group agreed that there needs to be more of these meetings. They probably need to be held quarterly, and there needs to be more participation on the user side. So what happened yesterday, first day was all users, second day was manufacturers of ISSI switches, or ISSI equipment. And the blending went on, not dissimilar to what we've got going on here. It was just a back and forth discussion, a series of questions. How would you do this? Why does it work this way? How come this is clunky? How come that works good? Those sort of things, and then what it needs to look like going forward. And right in the middle of that target, right in the middle of that entire discussion was the P25 standards. And what had really came out was that there's some gaps in the standards. Not that the standards don't exist, but how they're implemented. Each vendor implements them their own way, and there needs to be more standardization of the standards so that it works more elegantly. That would be my takeaway. Chair, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
If Sean could pull up the article that I asked him to put up here for everybody to see. There's 3 things that I'd like to point out about an ISSI. If there's any, first of all, the board members, do they know what an ISSI is? Because it's important that you understand what it is and why it refers to us to get that. It's important for us to use that ISSI solution which the state system offers. We have one solution as part of this contract, and we need to make sure that we use it the most effective way we can. So I'll wait until he pulls that up, and then I'll point to the 3 bullet points here in this article that pretty much explains it pretty simple. So we're looking after total interoperability in the state is our goal, is this board, and to govern that interoperability. So we're striving for, so everyone can talk to each other. We have a state system on its way, but we also have to be cognizant of the other systems that are in place to make sure that we connect those so we can talk to each other during events. Day-to-day is one thing, interoperability during disasters and unplanned events is another, and that's our job to make sure that we can all talk. One of the ways to do that is through an ISSI, which we, like I said, we have one as part of our contract. So in order to make that the best possible way to do things, here's an article that Mission Critical put out a while back, and do I scroll down here, or how do I do this? I want to scroll down to the bullets.
I think Sean's going to have to do the scrolling for you. I think it's over here on this computer.
And what I want to point to is keep going. If you look at it in the middle of the page, stop right there. Right under where it says, given the capability of an ISSI, it's easy to imagine some scenarios for its deployment. as follows. The first one is a network designer faced with the task of designing a large trunk network while preserving performance can break up the design into smaller subnetworks that intercommunicate using the ISSI. The second one is agencies that wish to set up mutual aid communications can interconnect their independent P25 systems and councils through ISSI and CSSI. The most important one is the public safety agency can deploy a radio system from this preferred vendor rather than joining a statewide system, but at the same time can still honor its interoperability obligations by connecting to the statewide system via the ISSI. I think that's important. It kind of applies to what we're trying to do here in Iowa. So from a high level overview, that's what it does. So later in the board meeting today under information sharing, I have a plan that in order to fill our obligation to study that ISSI and how this is going to work for Iowa. So, but the Denver meeting was very important because there were people there that use it, that use CSSI and use the ISSI from different vendors, talking to different vendors. And I missed the last day because I had to come back, but it was very informative because hands-on people that actually have used it, went through all the hiccups and all the programming features, but for the most part, it does work. So it works well.
Will you tell me again what ISSI and CSSI stand for, Tom?
Yes, ISSI is the interface that stands for system interface. Okay, and that interface would be between the core of one radio system and the core of another connected by a wire.
Okay.
The CSSI is the dispatch, our console connection. So similar. Now, so for folks in the room that understand connecting two pieces of wire, the cost of an ISSI can get to be pretty significant as you run across telephone companies. You have to have a way to get that wire from one core to the other core, and if you're connecting multiple cores, you can imagine all of the different daisy chain of connectivity that must occur. So there was a lot of time talked about the pinwheel approach, the loop approach, the center spoke approach. So there was a lot of conversations about how to help try and drive down those costs, but you can fully spend more money connecting the systems in backhaul than the cost of the technology to get the interoperability you need. So as we look at this and as we move forward, it's a very elegant solution, but it isn't without cost, and somebody has to pick that cost up.
And speaking of costs, in our budget, when we first formed our budget, one line item specifically, there's a $50,000 line item there that rolls each year in our budget that specifically will address, and the reason it was put there was for this very reason, to study how are we going to connect. Once this is up, how are we going to connect to the others? So there's money available to assist with that, not only assist with the committee that we're going to form here at the end of the day, or by next meeting, to assist with the research on that, but also assist with some local costs to get that connected.
Any other questions about the ISSI, CSSI component? I realize that it's very technical and we like to stay at a little higher level than that, but I think it's helpful to at least understand what the risks that we have before. Sheriff?
The $50,000 was just for the study itself, you said.
Right. You can use it for the study, or because since we rolled it, there should be about 150,000 in there right now, or close to 100. Because we've used some of that 50 for consultant, for the federal engineering to keep us on track here.
My point was that $150,000 doesn't go very far as transitional costs.
Right.
But from a standpoint of transitional planning
Yes.
and orderly development, those type of things, is really what it's for, right?
Yes, it would be for such as the committee to study how we're going to use our ISI solution. That would be appropriate to use those funds to figure that out.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, the other thing that I want to bring before the board is I have a conflict of travel, and we'll need to think through how we address our TIA meeting in Kansas City next month. I'm scheduled to be at the PSCR meeting. It's invitational travel from the federal government to participate in meetings that are held at PSCR. So that very same week, we have a TRA P25 meeting in Kansas City. And I am recommending that we send 2 members because of the proximity. It wouldn't require flight. I believe we can drive there pretty inexpensively. And so I would like to get permission from the board to use the travel that was set aside. We have money budgeted for travel for the P25 process. That in this instance, rather than sending just 1 person, we actually send 2. Since we haven't had conversations about who those 2 might be, I would like to just open the whatever necessary approvals to send 2 people to observe and then vote if there is a need for a vote on the P25 at the P25 meeting in Kansas City the week of June 6th. So I'm not sure parliamentarian-wise whether that requires a resolution or just an awareness from the board that the chair would be acting to meet our administrative obligations.
So it's not gonna cost us any more money because it's already budgeted, you're just sending a couple people in your place.
Correct.
Is there any board members that would like to go? It's a very, very technical meeting, correct?
Yes, sir.
Helen?
Oh, no.
Or Ellen? Just kidding.
Well, maybe what we could do is
Thank you anyway.
if there's interest, they could perhaps send an email to me or you or both of us, and we can go from there. But I did want to make the board aware that we have some voting rights and obligations now. This would be the second of our 2 required meetings to then be a voting member at the next meeting they hold. You have to show up twice and vote, be present in roll calls, and then you have the authority to vote on standards after that. So we're on all the committees, and I'll be happy to brief and work with whoever decides or has an interest in going. So if they could send me and you, or send you and CC me perhaps, an email, that might be the best way to go about deciding who has an interest and appetite for it.
Okay.
You approve? Is that okay with you?
That's fine.
All right.
Question, Tom, please.
Yes, Bob.
So this is Bob Uni. Relative to the ISSI study, what are possible outcomes of that study? Are there fiscal outcomes? Is something that we may have to spend money on? So what are outcomes as you see it at this point?
The first outcome is how are we best going to use it? Because there's different ways of using the ISSI. So you can use it to enhance your coverage, or you can use it to make just for disasters. You put the patch and use the ISSI so we can pass different things together. So that would be one outcome. The other one would be future costs of do we need any more? Do we need another? Or looking at coverage maps. That would be the second outcome.
So who does it take to make a study like this? Sounds like it's pretty down in the weed kind of thing.
Yeah, it's going to probably be Mr. Buffington and his user group committee along with technology to figure that out. And operations will probably have some role in that also.
Would there be an external element to the study with some technical expertise we might have to procure?
If we have to, we have the funds to do that. If that committee that we form feels it's necessary, I think that would probably be wise. So we also have great contacts that we just established, Craig has established through this committee that we were just at in Denver that have used it. So I intend to have those people available for those questions. That is imperative that we talk to the people that already have used it to connect 2 different vendors together.
So an outcome is optimization of the system.
Yes.
Sounds like.
And
For different situations.
And then I would imagine out of that would be some policy that would need to be formed, which would in turn come back to you.
I kind of sense that there's some potential there.
Yeah. Everything seems to revolve to governance at the end of the day, doesn't it?
Yeah, Helen thinks it's funny, but she's gonna be on the governance committee pretty quickly. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Do you have anything else?
That concludes my report. I would ask if the Deputy Swick has anything she would like to add. Please come forward.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board and distinguished guests, I would like to let you know about your Deputy Swick's meetings with the National Public Safety Telecommunications Council I'm on the broadband committee. That's 1 hour a month and then 2 hours a month for the LMR to LTE migration workshop and working group. We have our first draft of the public safety requirements use case report, and this is the LMR to LTE migration working group is very similar. What Craig is talking about is connecting two LMR systems together that have disparate technology, and what our working group is working on is more on the FirstNet side, but if we have an LTE FirstNet system, how do we connect that to existing LMR systems or P25 radio systems, because they will be working side by side in the future. So we're looking at public safety, mission critical voice, specifically in the LMR to LTE working group. And they include direct mode, talk around, push to talk voice, full duplex voice, group call, talker identification, emergency alerting, and voice quality. So those are some of the things that we're focusing on in our use cases. And what we have, you know, all the disciplines represented. We have different industry represented. We have government and different carriers and private industry represented in our working group. We have a large probably one of the largest working groups other than 3GPP, which is the standards of LTE. So, and all of our working groups feed up into the Broadband Council, or the Broadband Committee for NIPSC. So we have listed in our appendix the expectations of public safety, which I thought would be of interest to you, and I wanted to let you know what those are. Mission critical voice communication requirements for public safety, which is what I just read to you, including all mission critical items, mission support, business critical, consistency of user experience, management of user expectations, and there's some things underneath that. Security, which includes end-to-end encryption, physical and network security, and existing LMR system return on investment, which I think is very important to us as well. So this includes the ISSI and CSSI conversation, and that uses a SIP technology. If you're anything, if you know anything about SIP and voice and what we've done in the voice community, SIP is something that ICN is familiar with, OCIO is familiar with, that we've been using on the voice side for a very long time. So a lot of this isn't anything new to what people have been doing in Iowa. You know, broadband carriers have been doing in Iowa for probably a good 10, 12 years now. So I really believe that these technologies are things that many of your board members and your committee members can handle the conversation on. So, any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes the scope report.
Okay. Move on to the E911 Council report. Chair Ray.
Mr. Chair, Program Director Drew, she's going to take this.
There was a legislative bill that, now that the session is wrapped up, I'd like to talk a little bit about what that did. It's House File 2439 that was signed. It's very basic. It changes the pass-through amount of wireless surcharge that we provide to the local service boards from 46% to 60%. So that's wireless surcharge that will be going back to the PSAPs. It also puts a $4.4 million cap on the carryover fund. That's what we've traditionally passed through as in the form of grants, $100,000 grants to the PSAPs. So in fiscal year 2016, the current year, we anticipate that we'll have passed through around $12 to $13 million. And again, in 2017, that will be capped at $4.4 million. So what we are planning to do is basically provide that in a kind of a lump sum payment to the county service boards to make sure we utilize that entire $4.4 million. The other thing that it does with that 4.4 is it incentivizes and puts a priority on consolidation efforts, both physical and virtual. In a next-gen world, there's a lot of things you can do that you might not have to have $100,000 pieces of equipment in every single PSAP. So it's a way to encourage some cost savings with some virtual consolidation, so not actually closing PSAP doors, but sharing some services. So that $4.4 million basically is consolidation has to be considered first, and then everything else can be passed through to the county service boards. There is a list of frequently asked questions on our website, so if you're interested, feel free to take a look at that or get in touch with me. The other thing I wanted to talk about is we've been talking about text 911 for a long time. We talked about a pilot program, and that's basically been with a web browser, kind of almost looks like an instant message screen. What we just recently accomplished is it's integrated now with the call taker screen, so a text will come in just like a call. The telecommunicator can respond, again, just like it's a call, typing of course instead of talking, but that is integrated text 911 that was accomplished in Cedar County, so we'll be looking to do that statewide, hopefully sooner rather than later. So that is the first county that's received text messaging that way. We're also looking at doing a beta product of a map of and all the contacts with 911. I know it gets a little bit into chasm, so we'll be talking with Sean to make sure there's no duplication, but all of we have about 3 different contacts for every PSAP, and putting that on a map so it can be, you hover over it and you see the contacts for that PSAP, and if it's usable, great, we'll finalize it and make it professional, and put it on our website for the public to see as well. So, any questions?
I do have one. Back up to the physical versus virtual.
Yeah.
For my own mind,
Yep.
to qualify for consolidation, does it mean that virtually you can do it, you don't physically have to shut a center down? Is that what you're saying?
Correct, and of course to local PSAPs, that's obviously going to be more palatable, and we already have some PSAPs that share basically the call handler equipment. So when it's hosted in one county, the big forklift, the call processing equipment is in one PSAP, but you use it remotely in another PSAP. So it can be done with, again, call processing equipment, it can be done with CAD, it can be done with logging recorders. So we're interested in all of those types of arrangements. And we're writing the rules behind that and defining what will be eligible right now, actually. So when we have those public hearings, it'll go out to the PSAP community and the council, and I'll report on it here as well.
Sure.
Just a question for clarification, and pardon me for being a little dense on this, but you start talking about consolidation. So just to clarify, you're talking about the potential to literally reduce the number of PSAPs. So maybe counties will just say, for instance, will be sharing multiple dispatch centers per county. Is that right?
Right, so right now there's 113 state-recognized PSAPs. I know the legislature is interested in lowering that number. What we're saying is, okay, that's an okay idea, but we can also keep those doors open, still save a significant amount of money just by sharing equipment.
What I was leading my question to, the new system at the state DPS is putting in, and this is for clarification. Are they going to be, because you have how many PSAPs now? How many dispatch centers do you have?
113.
No, I mean the state patrol. 5. Are you reducing that number too?
Yes.
The new system. What are you reducing it down to?
We're not sure yet, but we're in the works.
Okay. Just so we have that clear that the state's going to be bleeding that also by doing what they're talking about doing. I just don't want to have to face the argument from the locals that turn around and say, why are you taking mine away from me? You know, that type of thing. So the local control is always going to be a big argument once you start to get into the rushes. And I understand that your organization really is that rushes, you know, that's your job. But as a sheriff or CEO of an agency, I think it's important that we have that all laid out in advance, the savings that it's going to, and then also that they're going to be equally doing that at the state level.
So that's a really good point, because the other thing that House File 2439 asks us to do is study consolidation, and everyone's tired of studies, so I'm phrasing it more as a statewide strategic plan, which we're fully intending on trying to build consensus involving local PSAP supervisors, sheriffs, telecommunicators, wireless providers, landline providers and trying to figure out a plan and kind of a master way to do business. We've talked, I guess, a little bit internally to just spitballing ideas. You could, everyone wants to close doors. You don't have to close doors. You could, instead of having a controller in every PSAP, just have 6 controllers throughout the state. So I think that's probably a little bit more palatable, but you're still giving up a little bit of local control. When the technician has to show up, he's not showing up to your PSAP, he's showing up across the state, but he's still fixing what's not working locally.
Well, if nothing else, you're losing jobs locally. Seriously, I mean, you're looking at jobs are $40,000 or $50,000 jobs, or, and all of a sudden you're gonna lose 10 of them from an area of 12 or 14, so.
But there's a difference between the NG 911 side consolidation with switches and stuff, but physically dispatching a car from that PSAP, are you going to be doing it from that PSAP or from another PSAP?
And that's the reason why we don't necessarily want to close a bunch of doors.
Right.
But those are all the questions that have to be answered.
Exactly. And we're never saying we're gonna make those decisions in a vacuum. We definitely wanna get local support and input.
Chances are you won't make a decision for me.
That's true, and most of we're not making the decision, the legislature probably will.
Okay, but not for me. Go ahead, next, go ahead.
Anything else? Thanks.
Okay, we'll move on to Chair Buffington. Are you on the phone?
Yes, I am.
Would you please go ahead with your report for the UGC?
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Regional Interoperable Committee continue to continue their good work, and it's been encouraging seeing them grow. We're getting them some action items and things like that. A special thank you to Deputy Swick Trinovich for her input and her work. The Swick has been valuable. Also, right now we're continuing to work on that process for the UGC membership, which includes, as most of you have heard or know, that it's the letter of intent to join. That, once that's received by the chair, that's forwarded to the user group committee. We'll be sending some foundational documents such as the MOA and any type of needed resolution, and then the UGC will do that consideration with eventually, and hopefully even next month, we'll start seeing some recommendations from the UGC to the full board for inclusion on ISICS, and then the board chair, Mr. Lampy, will be in charge of propagating our UGC with those folks. Still waiting for some representation from some outlying groups on the UGC, and as you will probably hear, the UGC has been working closely within the technology committee to talk about allocation of talk group IDs, subscriber IDs, and things like that. So we're rolling forward with that, and also working with governance on some of the things that you hear from Mr. Uni later, as well as some of the items near the end of the agenda. But unless there's any questions, I have nothing else for my report, and I'll have to apologize because I'm going to have to get off the call because I'm at a training right now, and my esteemed Vice Chair, Mr. Dennert, has graciously agreed to answer any questions on behalf of the user group committee.
So I have a question for your Vice Chair.
Go ahead.
So we get back to the letter of intent that you mentioned. Are you looking for this board to come up with, through governance, sorry Bob, to come up with a sample letter of intent for a county or a city to join? Is that your goal here? Because he mentioned getting a letter of intent. That comes from the county to the chair. Do you want us to give a sample out so people can just fill like a one-pager out, or what are you looking for?
I would like to see something along that line, so that each organization that wishes to join ISICS doesn't have to make it up on their own. If we could provide some sort of template, whether fill in the blank or anything. Now, Dallas County specifically, Mr. McManahan, I've sent him some emails saying if Dallas County wants to provide that first template and it's acceptable to the board, then with the permission of Dallas County, we would use that as as the template to provide those other agencies and other entities around the state that wish to join. If that's the case, yes, I would definitely like to see some sort of template come out from the board that we'd be able to pass down, so that way they're meeting any requirements that we might have.
So this becomes part of a package, then, that when someone requests, here's an example of what that might look like, an example of what the resolution might look like, an example of all of those elements of the checklist.
Okay.
Yes, I think after the LOI is received, that I believe from conversations, and we need to nail this down, is that I think from there they need to be sent some foundational documents to actually join. They need the MOA. So again, how each agency is going to do it is ultimately up to them. Now, any of those covered municipalities, so a covered municipality would be, let's say, again, I'll use my county for an example, in Hancock County. In Hancock County, we are going to sign the memorandum of agreement that says, yes, we want to join ISICS, and then we will go to each one of the municipalities that we dispatch for and have their governing body, city councils, they will sign a resolution in support of the signing of the memorandum of agreement. And so that package needs to be forwarded to the locals. The locals need to do the work and then send that back. UGC will consider it and make a recommendation to the full board on their joining or not.
So that's the process. I think that falls in line with Mr. Benson's outreach plan in one of your slides, the 4-step process. Okay.
So from the perspective of the relationship, Andy, as you just described it, the relationship between ISICS and Hancock County is between ISICS and the county, and then the relationship between the county and the local municipalities is with the county. In other words, so that we're not getting it, or are you envisioning that each city would complete a package and it comes in as we've got this stack of multiple requests bundled together in one county?
Well, right, I think that it's going to be jurisdictionally decided. Again, what's worked well for a small county like Hancock County or Winnebago or any of those names may not be exactly how they do it. That's how I would envision doing it, because those municipalities that have fire departments and or police departments, EMS services, those entities are covered by the cities. We dispatch for them, so that's how we're going to cover it. Now, if we go over and say Woodbury County, if Woodbury County signs an MOA, the city of Sioux City might say, no, we want to do our own. We want to have our own interests expressed by signing an MOA, do whatever type of resolutions that might need to be happened. So it's really a case-by-case basis as they go out. So we're going to have to keep a really open lines of communication, through Mr. Benson, through the UGC, through the Regional Interoperable Committee, so that we're able to actually communicate those things and help those entities, agencies, and organizations that want to join ISICS, so that we can try to ask questions and have some sort of intelligent discourse rather than just guessing.
So the importance of getting it on the process itself on the website so people know how to. And also, and I'll get some opinion here, do we not need a policy statement as to how that process works through this board?
I think we under 2015-01, we could use that as a procedure, whereby we would have, that way if we learn that there's a modification and we don't have to revise the policy statement, just make it right. I think that would probably meet the needs that you're talking
So
about.
do we add it to this?
It would it would be a protocol in how we carry out the policy statement.
Okay.
Right, Mr. Chair of the Governance Committee, isn't that kind of the conversation that we've had?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is the conversation we've had, and I think we're looking for maybe could be a series of protocols that help define what 2015-01 is and how it's implemented.
Okay.
So we're gonna go through 2015-01 a little bit today and talk about some of the complexities that are involved in this process. I'm not sure there's any one size that fits all. 113 PSAPs in 99 counties and 750 cities in Iowa, something like that. So there's some complexity there. So I think we need to have some room for a little variance in the process.
Okay. Do you have anything else? Now that I think all the questions that I had have been answered, do you have anything that you want to say?
Don't plan it, don't you?
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Rob. Mr. Buffington, are you finished?
Yes, sir, thank you.
Thank you. Move on to finance. Chair Grosker is not here. Nikki Whitaker, are you on the phone?
Yes.
If you would go ahead.
Yes, I am.
Okay, would you go ahead and give the finance report, please?
Of course. The Finance Committee met May 3rd and reviewed the financial statements. The current balance remaining in the grant is approximately $1.2 million. Of that, approximately $986,000 is from the grant, and the remaining $246,000 is the match for that grant. In the other account, which is the general fund account, the remaining funds that are available is $199,000. Additional funds were appropriated during the for FY17 through the recent legislative session, an additional $154,661, and those would become available beginning July 1. There were no other specific items discussed by the Finance Committee. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Any questions for finance? I don't believe we have any travel requests this month. Okay. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you.
Moving on to governance, Mr. Uni.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair and fellow board members. The Governance Committee continues to be monthly, and under my Governance Committee report, I would like to cover the handout that I had passed out to everybody earlier today. And then under old business, we have some more Governance Committee things to discuss. So would that be okay to proceed that way, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I've got some more of these up here, if you need one for your right hand and left hand at the same time, or somebody doesn't have one. What's in front of you is the first 3 pages are policy statement 2015-01 as it comes off the board's website. The next 4 pages are that same document laid out in a little different style. It's spread out and lines are numbered so we can talk about specific lines and maybe have some ability to connect on what we're talking about. And the last 2 pages are diagrams of the user group committee. The first one, the top one, is the one that we talked about in November of 2015. It was conceptual at that point. And, it shows the layout of the user group committee based on the governance statement that we adopted in document 2015-01. And the second page is new. I put some names on it, so we couldn't envision how this is going to work real well back in 11 or back in 15, November of 15. Now we have some people. And I put the most current names on here that I had, with Andy as the chair, and the chair of the standing committee has to be a board member, so a board member will always occupy that green box. And the top row are the representatives of the RICs, the RIC chairs. And if I have some incorrect names, or please correct it for me. District 1 had a little movement, and Rob, maybe you can give me a name for the new person that's doing that.
No,
Region
1 is Rob Denner.
Okay, no, I thought somehow Rob
Then
left
Region
that
4
position.
is Doug Reed.
Region 4 is Doug Reed.
Yes. Potawatomi County.
Yep. So I will get those changes made, just kind of keep that up to date, and perhaps, Mr. Chair, we can put this document on the website and just to kind of have a running scorecard of who's where. Yes, we'll talk about that. So back to the governance document. I'd like to start with page number, the page 4, 5, and 6, and 7. And specifically, let's go to page 6. And as painful as this is going to be, this is not the last time we're gonna be going through this document. You can just take that right to the bank. So we went through it a lot of times to bring it to fruition back in 2015. And we're gonna have a number of discussions, through this statement, or through this policy. And that's gonna help us generate protocols. So that, in my opinion, so we have a governance document here, let's go through it. So let's start with line 84, 85, and 86. Okay, so the ISICSB shall establish a standing user group committee, UGC, of no more than 18 voting members from county and local, comma, and no more than one additional vote per state or federal agency operationally using the platform. So let's compare those 3 lines with the user group committee diagram that we have on page 9. Okay. So no more than 18 voting members. So if you look at the diagram on page 9, there are 18 blue blocks. Those 18 blue blocks correspond to the governance statement where it talks about 18 members. Okay? About 18 members, no more than 18 voting members from county and local. And then it goes on to say no more than one additional vote per state or federal agency operational using the platform. Well, that's the black blocks at the bottom, or in the middle, toward the bottom of that. So like we got Iowa DPS there, Iowa DOT, DOC, and as yet unnamed other agencies. So names to be filled in later. Are there any questions about that part? We have some more to go here, but we're just making a good start here.
Committee chair abstains from voting.
I'm not sure what you mean, Ted.
Well, that's the 19th number. The way you wrote it, 18 members can vote.
Okay, so 18 voting members from, and it's qualified to be from city and county, or from county and local. There's nothing says the chair can't vote. Okay. It's just talking about defining what those 18 members did. At least as I see it, Ted, I think you've touched on something that perhaps needs to have a protocol that defines that further, but we'll work these things out as we go. Any other questions from the board on that first statement? Are there questions from the audience on what we just covered? Okay, so starting on line 86 and going to line 87 and 88. One voting member from each region shall be the Regional Interoperability Committee RIC chair for that region, whether or not the RIC chair is a user of platform. So the distinction I want to draw here is that we have members, but the only ones that are required to be from the RICs are the RIC chairs themselves. And so specifically, we have Rob in Region 1 and so on through the top row of the blue blocks. The other people do not necessarily have to come from the RICs. And we had a pretty significant discussion on this point in the governance committee. And some people during our discussion thought that the governance discussion we had early on would require each one of the 18 people to be from the RICs. And that is not the case. That's not what the way the policy statement was written or voted on. And let me give an example that I gave at the board meeting about why maybe that's not, why we need some flexibility here. So for example, one of the governance committee members is the police chief of Ames, Chuck Sykosh. So it's not likely that Chief Sykosh has the time to be an active member on a RIC. But there is such a thing. It might be useful to have an administrator at his level on the user group committee. So that's just an example. And does the board have any comments on this point, on these points we just talked about, on those points? Any comments from the audience? Or questions? Okay, let's move on to line 88 through 100. I'm not gonna read all this out, but this is the ex officio non-voting members of the group. These are people that have, and represent certain constituencies and have certain expertise that are named here. And we had more than one board meeting where we talked about who should be on this list. And we think it's inclusive, but if you also notice, and the yellow that's highlighted on here are the things that relate directly to the governance committee. So I had this as a handout for our last governance committee meeting. And it talks about and other associations as being necessary by the governance committee to ensure adequate representation of stakeholders in monitoring and governance of this platform. And so the point here is, and the point that we voted on last year, is that we want to be inclusive. We don't want to be exclusive. We want to be inclusive. And if we think we missed somebody, fine, we'll deal with it. And those statements then from 88 through 100 was represented by the yellow block at the bottom of the diagram. So that's that list there. And in talking with Andy Lovington, the chair of the user group, I mean, he's concerned that we're going to have so many people show up, it's going to be hard to accommodate everybody. And I told him I think that's a good problem to have. We'll deal with that. Okay, comments from the board on lines 88 through 100. From the audience? Okay, let's move on to lines 100 through 105. To be a voting member, unless chair from that region, users must be from and represent a user agency using this interoperable platform for daily operational / interoperability in their respective regions. User agencies must demonstrate full-time daily operational interoperable use on interoperable platform as determined by governance committee. So, we have not discussed this in any great detail here amongst the board. We have discussed it in a little bit of detail on the governance committee. And I have discussed it with Chair Lampy, trying to get educated myself on what Tom's view is and Chair's view is of what this says. And I'm not so sure, but this won't take some time to develop how we apply this. That's my view at this point. I don't have any firm opinion. And again, I think we're more interested in being inclusive than exclusive. And I think this is something we'll discuss a little bit more as time goes on. Are there comments from the board members on this section? Are there comments from the audience on this section? Terry?
Yeah, Bob. As written, when you say full-time daily operational / interoperable, is that / considered more of an and or an or?
It's an and as I see it, and the or has a complete different connotation. And that's one of the things that, in fact, that's the point of the discussion that maybe Craig and I have had, and Tom and I have had, is to how do we apply it. And I think we'll have to see where this leads us. I think there's a certain amount of flexibility the way this is written, and it was written that way intentionally. And we don't want to rule people out, but yet we want to have people on the user group that use the system in the way that it's defined here, operationally and interoperable. It's not a very good answer, Terry. What do you think? Is that at least it's a start of a discussion?
Yeah, it's just, I guess I'm still a little bit confused because, I mean, at the beginning, you really don't have users that are daily operational users of the system yet. So, does that mean you're going to be waiting until they are users before you're filling spots? Or, if people are using it at first, connecting with it for interoperability, does that make them a value?
I knew that was coming to it.
Yeah, sorry about that.
So would you repeat the question to start with maybe and just so the audience knows?
Yeah, let me grab this. Okay, asking about lines 103 and 104, carrying on into in 105. It says that the user agencies must demonstrate full-time daily operational / interoperable use on the interoperable platform. And so the question is really, does that mean that people that have converted and are using the new state system for all of their daily use, is that what's required for them to be eligible to be a voting member or a user agency? Or if someone is maintaining what they currently have as a legacy infrastructure, but tying in maybe through an ISSI to the statewide network, are they going to be eligible to be on the user group committees?
The conversations, Terry, I'm glad you brought that up. I think there were 2 board meetings that that particular topic came up. And the experience that we've had from talking to other states is that it's a sword that's sharp on both sides. That blade cuts both ways. One is that you limit the voting members to those members who actually have skin in the game and use it every day. And they become the overseers of the system that they use every day, and interoperability is a component of their operational needs. The other is, in some instances, you may, at least initially, be somewhat exclusive to a lot of the volunteer organizations because the systems have startup costs. There's sort of a challenge to find adequate revenue to bring an entire volunteer fire department on, as an example. So you want diversity of disciplines, police, fire, EMS, and other users in the voting realm. That's one of the things that we've learned. And the other is that you do want to limit it to people that are using it. Not that anybody would do this on purpose, but there can be implications for having an interoperable user that uses the system once every 2 months, setting policy for someone who has to use it every day. And that's probably where, that's not to say that the position can't change, but that was the spirit and intent when the document was written, and that was a documentation that we had in the meeting conversations when we were passing this particular resolution, or this particular policy statement. Good question, and I think we tried to cover that also with the regs.
Yeah, and I just, I don't know the language is specifically clear, the way it's written, but maybe your intent is you don't want it to be. Because if you feel like you need some flexibility there, but I think that's why the question comes up.
Yeah, it gives us the ability to then write procedures that fit our needs as the needs change without having to go back and rewrite the policy.
Thank you.
So Terry, how do you feel about the discussion here? Is this, I think you raised a very practical question. And are you comfortable with where we are right now from your perspective?
Well, I think more than anything, I'm just trying to interpret the language. I appreciate the explanation. I think typically, if a detailed explanation is meant to clarify the language, then the language isn't any clearer. I think it's, but maybe that's by design, as Craig was saying, where you want to leave it subject to interpretation. So,
Okay, thank you, Terry.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else from the audience would like to say anything? Have a question on this point? Any board member have anything else you want to raise based on Terry's comments? Okay, let's move on to line 105 through 108. So we talk about who can join and what criteria we talk about, and then may apply in writing to the chair for appointment to UGC as one representative from the region. The chair shall appoint no more than 3 users from any one of 6 regional areas, and one of those 3 regional representatives shall be the RIC chair for that region. So this is where Chair Langley gets involved. This is the application process we're talking about. And this is also where we define that the RIC chairs are definitely on a group part of the 18. Question from the board. Okay, starting on line 108 and moving on down through line 121 on the next page. This, we start to talk about the chair and how the chair goes about doing the appointing duties. And I'm not going to read through this. And Tom and I had a couple conversations about what this means. And when we wrote this, I think the language was solid enough to at least give some criteria. I still think it's that way. And I think it gives some elements of consideration for the chair to give toward the remaining 12 members of the regional committee, user group committee that will need to be appointed and can be appointed.
So, Bob, the committee's intent, by going through this policy statement, is there intent to review it because it was written at a time where we didn't have a system, and now to see if it still works with the system elegantly, or?
The intention of going through this, Tom, was first of all, we talked about rotation of members, and I brought up the fact that I think we need to be more aware of, and have continued situational awareness of what this language is and how we apply it. So when we developed this and when we voted on it, mid and late 2015, it was, we had it there and we didn't really have it applied. Now we're starting to apply it. The user group committee exists. We have a chair. We have 6 members on this committee. And it's time for us to reacquaint ourselves with the language of the policy and be aware of that we have some decisions that are facing the chair on filling out this committee. And so yesterday, we had a ceremony in Dallas County, and Adele, as the Dallas County being the first joiner of the system. Well, that's just going to start. There's going to be more over time. So we're making a start, and we owe it to the governance here to make sure we understand what our responsibilities are as a board, and the chair, what the chair's responsibilities are. Because I see it. That's the purpose, Tom.
Okay.
Questions from any other questions from the board on these last few lines, the last lot of lines? Question from the audience? Mr. Chair, that is my governance committee report.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. Chair Comanches, operation.
I guess I'm on. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excuse me a second, I just got a text from National Sheriffs. One of our senators voted against one of our bills in DC. The committee had a phone conversation and phone meeting on April 20th. We had 11 of our members who were present on the call. The majority of that discussion evolved around the STR trailers and the development of that subcommittee under Cindy Fox. During the discussion, some of the other individuals I've spoken with about this, who would serve, if you will, for now, under a lack of better terms, as kind of regional chairs, sub-chairs, if you would, for that committee, are Curtis Walzer, Wally, and Tom Reese, and Rob Copper. And what it'll do is, that'll give us somebody who's going to help coordinate the efforts on the east, central, and west trailers, okay? There's been a lot of communication that's happened since our phone meeting. And what I'd like to do, if I could, because Cindy's here, just call, Cindy, could you bring us up to date where you guys are at on that a little bit?
Thanks, Sheriff. Like you said, we got Wally, Tom, and Rob for our regional vice chairs, or however you want to call them. We also have Marty Smith is on the subcommittee from the Department of Public Health. Currently, right now, the west trailer is actually located here in Des Moines with the central trailer. Due to some construction issues at 2nd Avenue Radio or Post 15, we have to get the trailers out of there for a while, so I made arrangements for them to be housed at Joint Forces headquarters in the secured gated area out back. And we have permission to keep them there as long as we need. With the West trailer being here central, Rob Cobbler and I, and probably a couple other committee members, are gonna start the initial process for doing inventory on that trailer, since it hasn't really been touched. And hopefully we're gonna work on that today.
The trailers are out at JB's2 now?
No, we're actually moving them right after lunch today. We're gonna go pick them up and haul them back out there. The National Guard's given us permission to take them out there, and I believe I have card access, since I work out there, to get into the back gated area.
So if we need the trailer, how do we get it? What's the process? You, to get it?
Yeah, I guess.
Is it in that lock gate when you first drive to the right?
Yep, it's in the locked gateway right now. The process will probably be me. And our hope is to get the one DPS truck that is hooked up to the West trailer, also store it out there, so in case we do need to take either trailer somewhere, we do have the capability to. Since right now they're shoveling a lot of stuff into supply to get it out of the parking area, we don't want to, I guess, get the truck buried or the trailers buried back behind equipment where we can't get to it.
That's always been my concern there. Plus, it's always a challenge to get some vehicle to tow it.
Yes.
And someday we'll have to address that as the board to figure that out. I've already had some discussions with Bob on DOT auctions on vehicles to find something so we don't have to worry about this, because it's always going to be an issue.
Yeah, because right now, basically, we steal something from radio. There's an old Ford F-250 that's out there that can haul the trailers, as well as a dually truck that is what we'll be using today. Also, in case we run into one of those situations, Marty with the Department of Public Health has also mentioned if we get into a crunch and stuff, he does have access to trucks that would be able to tow the trailers.
Okay.
So in the past, we have used DOT has been kind enough to take it to different locations for us. They seem to have the appropriate equipment to make that happen.
It always takes time to make those calls, and then,
Right.
so we've got to really work on streamlining that.
Yep.
One of the problems that you're gonna run across is you know, you don't wanna get yourself in a situation where somebody turns around and let's just say we put it at DOT.
Yep.
And now we cut a deal where DOT is gonna be on call to move that trailer for us.
Right.
Then is there gonna be, you know, are you gonna end up with union issues, bargaining unit issues? Who's gonna do it? What kind of truck is gonna tow it? No, that person can't run air brakes. There's a lot of, you know, a lot of issues that you have to plan, and that's really what the subcommittee's gonna work through. Right now, the biggest problem we have is the fact that two trailers are right here in the middle part of the state. Now, that's a good problem right now because frankly, there's a lot of catching up to do with the West trailer.
Correct.
Now, the other thing is we have to find somebody who really is willing to accept the responsibility of taking care of that West trailer. Now, that means more than just, that means, you know, working with whoever gets assigned the West trailer for inventory and monitoring it, whatever your committee comes up with, that they do that on a regular basis. Another thing is gonna have to be, you know, the coordination of getting somebody to haul it around probably. And if you can find somebody that's local to wherever one of these trailers is tied or sitting, that's gonna be the benefit. You know, when they're needed, they're needed. I know just like our mobile command, just like many of you, nothing ticks me off more than the time we need something and something doesn't work. And then I have somebody in my office and I just don't like doing that in the first place. So the thing is we're all, you know, adults, let's just make sure we can cover our bases on it. And that's the biggest plus about your committee, is you guys are all tech savvy and I know, I feel very, very secure in who's running it. I'm excited about that, to be quite honest with you. So, you know, so thank you for your committee and we're looking forward to seeing how this evolves, okay? In the weeks and months ahead, I think. That's the biggest thing, so. Anything else for Cindy at all?
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, Cindy.
I also had a chance to talk with Stephen Ray. Everybody here knows Steve. You know, the one thing about this that I've noticed is you've got this little core of people, and I'll say there's 15 of them, and I'll probably be lucrative when I say 15, who really are on a lot of different, committees. They have a lot of irons in the fire. You know, Rob Dennert sent us the Strategic Technology Reserve Standard Operating Procedure, for instance. You know, I think did you send it to me? You know, we were talking about how do you get the trailers out, and how do you fill out the sheet work for it. And Rob's doing everything, as Rob is doing everything, as Wally's doing everything. So what we want to do is we hope that as far as our committee goes, that we're going to be able to find other fingers to get into the pie. So you guys think about that. And if somebody is interested in volunteering to participate, let's say in the trailers, or with Stephen Ray, as we get into the public-private partnership process, that's just going to start to be worked and built in the next month up ahead. Stephen, you and I spoke. You just want to address what you told me a little bit quick, as far as. Sure. Thank you. And he's been busy too with several different things.
Yeah, I got the message from the sheriff on the 20th in an email. Thanks for the volunteer. Like that.
That's okay.
Voluntold. The last couple of weeks have been awfully busy, and I'll be on next week doing some stuff over in eastern Iowa, but we're going to get together with Jason Hoffman, Rob Dennert, and we'll start this process of the public-private partnership aspect of all this and make some move on it. But we'll encourage other people that want to get involved, obviously, because this is a big deal, and this will have a lot of implications. We want to make sure that it's not just getting vendors involved for sales. It's more to get them involved so that there's an understanding of all the different abilities that are out there.
That's the biggest thing, and I think Stephen's in a great position right now where you're sitting right as the chair of the E911. That's right. I told him when he and I spoke, I said, I'm not looking for somebody that's going to have longevity in this committee. I'm looking for somebody who can go down, if you will, down through the ranks and find the bodies who know this stuff. And that group will ultimately formulate this into a nice structure. And then we're going to be looking for other people to take over, because we don't want to burn anybody out either. And again, that goes back to my earlier comment about all the people who've got fingers, or the limited number of people who've got fingers in the pie.
I think some of the things that you pointed out in your email to me, which are important, is like your private medical services and all those types of things that are out there that at some point we may have to deal with. So we need to make sure that they're all included in some way.
There's no doubt about it. You go around the world. I mean, I can remember my first trips to Israel. It wasn't until they actually got these private organizations involved in their communications that they really began to see massive leaps in things like emergency response or medical treatment, those type of things. So I'm excited about that group. We'll work on it. So thank you very much for volunteering on that, Stephen. I appreciate it anytime. The other thing about it is, I know we talked last month about having a meet and greet face-to-face with our committee. So what I want to do is I think is it June 9th is our next meeting? Is that correct, Mr. Chair?
Should be later than that. Is that the second Thursday?
That's the second Thursday. Okay, it's my desire, and I'll send something out the end of this week, to have our operations committee meet. We'll order in some pizza, and we'll sit down after this meeting. Now, here's the thing. I really am hesitant to keep saying this, because every time it happens, I break my damn leg or something goes on in my life. So that is a tentative right now, is we're going to have the operations committee follow the interop meeting next month. And that'll be our first sit down. And what we'll do is we'll work through some of these subcommittees, and we'll kind of lay out maybe a little game plan. So plan about an hour and a half is what my thoughts are. And I'm looking forward to really getting this kind of solidified, and then turn it all over to Ellen. So that's the greatest thing about it. But really, that's all I have for. If any of the committee members want to say something I'm missing on this, but we've got a good start in this couple of things. Great substructure right now.
So I have two questions for you.
Yes, sir.
First question is, is that part of the committee's job to get the inventory program you're going to buy or use
Okay.
for someone else to get, is that part of that?
That subcommittee is gonna work with the deputies, the SWIC, to look at the program to do that inventory. One of the things that we wanna do is those inventories are gonna be consistent between the three trailers. That's one of the reasons we've developed these little, I hate to keep using the word regional, but you know, the east, central, and west subs of that group. And some of the inventory and some of the trailers is really excellent. All the generic original inventory is done. I think it's a matter of freshening it up and then developing a schedule that it needs to be checked and doing that. And then, on the meantime, while they're doing it physically right now, they'll be able to go ahead and put together something, electric system that'll handle it. But they're the techs in this thing. It's gonna be their baby to come up with what they think is gonna be most flexible, fluid, and to do the job the best in all three trailers. There's no sense, it's stupid for us to have three different, you know, separate entities, you know, east, west, and central. They should all be the same, it should all be done the same, and we should all have access to it the same way. So they've got their hands full, and as that committee grows a little bit more, they'll be able to handle it. And again, the east group will have a little group, and the central will have a little group, and the west, and Cindy will coordinate those people, and I'm sure it'll go over well.
So it's like a barcoding system is what.
Yeah, a barcoding system, yes, some electric system.
You gotta make it simple for them to integrate. If it's simple, then it's efficient and
There is a good generic, if you will, I don't know if that's the right verbiage to use, inventory right now. Whether or not it shows all the baggies that are in there or not, or you know, I don't know, or how many bars of soap, I don't know. That's something that they're gonna have to do as they look at those trailers.
Okay.
That's your one question.
The second question is, where are we at on the ham radios that are inside the trailers? Are they functional? I think it needs to be part of a test also.
Tom, go ahead. I think they're all in the trailers, aren't they, sitting in the trailers?
I mean,
Go ahead.
won't take but a minute. All three trailers are equipped with amateur radio both HF, UHF, VHF, digital D-Star, and we've completed installing those in the Gator boxes. West and central are identical and very close to what is in the east. They're all identically programmed as we speak, and all of the items are in bags and they're appropriately to be moved.
Okay. But that's you just don't forget about the ham people when we're testing out that radio equipment. They're very important to us.
That's why they're involved.
Okay,
So,
good deal.
yep.
That's my last question.
And that's why they're involved in it, and the reason I mentioned, because I know they were working on that last month, putting the stuff in, so I'm glad they, and that's what I'm saying, this is a group of people who dive on that stuff pretty hard. If you see the communication that's been happening, I'm really excited about it, what you guys are gonna do. That's all I've got, Mr. Chair.
Good job. Okay, we'll move on to Mr. Menson.
Thank you. Just a very brief report. With regard to the outreach on the network, we did have to, due to some scheduling conflicts, we did have to move the dates back a week. So instead of starting on the 18th of May, we'll be starting on the 25th. We'll go May 25th, June 1st, June 7th, June 15th. We will not be doing 3 a day, we'll just be doing 2 a day. So the first one on each of those days will start at 11, with the second one at 12:30. So it'll roughly work out to be about an hour worth of a formal presentation through the webinar, and then leaving a half hour for questions and answers. So the 25th and 1st will kind of be the policy level discussion ones. The 7th and 15th will focus more on the technical type of stuff for the radio heads are out there that are curious at how the beast actually works with more of the technical discussion. So the 25th and 1st will be really more driven towards the policy folks, the decision makers that are going to evaluate if they want to get onto the system and those type of things. We do have the notification or the invitations will be going out soon. Sean's been diligently working on those, as they will be utilizing constant contact. So every mailing list that we've got that has been given to Sean for both the board for the 911 stuff, any place we've gotten one, if you're on one, you're going to be getting an email from us with regard to that. It'll be an electronic registration, so it'll be widely spread out. You will be able to watch it live if you're so inclined to get onto the webinar. We will be recording them as well and putting them onto the board's YouTube page. So if you aren't able to make any of those 4 dates listed, 8 webinars, you will also have an opportunity to watch those online. We will be obviously adjusting those as we go forward and kind of building based on feedback that we get in terms of what that will look like as we go forward as well. I was going to show the slide deck today, but we're an hour and a half in, so if you're interested in seeing what that's going to look like, it's all branded and nice, and the good folks at Motorola have been working diligently with us to make that happen. Also on the website, you'll see the first piece of, how should we say, quick information. If you go to the ISICSB.iowa.gov and click on the ISICS radio platform icon, it will take you to that platform webpage. And on that webpage, you'll find the first piece of information, what's referred to as the ISICS brochure. It's just a real quick front page, 2-pager with regard to what the kind of that 40,000-foot view of what the backbone is supposed to be doing, what it's going to accomplish, how it's going to get from A to B to C, and even has information about how you go through that process of registering to access the network. So that discussion that they were having with Andy with regard to how the UGC is going to do it, that stuff's already starting to get out there. And you'll start to see more of those kind of elements starting to show up, and we'll start branding that stuff on the website. It'll pair up with the microsites that Motorola is doing, so you'll see constant messaging, a constant appearance on how that's going to look. So you'll start to see those type of things happening. So look for those invitations to show up to you probably by the end of this week, I'm thinking. Sean's not furiously shaking his head no at me. So we'll look to see that, and then we'll get started on the 25th with those webinars, and those webinars will be a joint effort between the deployment team on the state side as well as folks from Motorola. So that's really the gist of my report for this month, sir.
Okay, one question for you. What style of presentation is it? Is it a live, somebody's presenting, or is it recorded that somebody watches the presentation? How are you going to do that?
We've actually had discussions about doing both. We're probably going to have one, well, it's going to have to be live from the aspect that there's going to be a Q&A at the end of it. So it is going to take a time commitment, but we've got that buried away, so it looks like about a 3-hour time commitment on those respective days. But we are also considering doing a nicely recorded, formalized one on the YouTube page, so you would have both a recording of the live ones, as well as a more formalized one that if you wanted to just let it rip in somebody's, in some place, you could let it go, and you already know what it's going to look like. You don't have to guess at what it's going to happen. So you'll have multiple choices. But with the webinars, I personally prefer to have those done live, so you can, because you're going to have a fair amount of interaction on the back end of those, I would suspect.
All right. Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Benson? All right. We'll move to Mr. Wagner. It's echoing when I put it up.
Thank you. I have just a quick update. John pretty much talked about the Zoom and the presentation. I've been testing that diligently. We had some issues initially. We didn't want double registration, so we were cleaning that up, as well as cleaning the content that was provided by Motorola to send those out. Currently, we're working on, as far as we're with the ICN for new FirstNet outreach. We're going to be working to go out and work with the schools that they've turned up the Wi-Fi, and we're going to see how we can talk about that and how that'll look once FirstNet's implemented. So there are 3 schools currently that have this Wi-Fi system enabled for public safety folks when they come on site or near the site, that they should be able to use this. So we want to go out and talk with the schools, see how it's working for them, talk with local officers and other public safety folks that are using it, especially, Sheriff Comanches at one of the schools that are in his area, to say, is this working? Is this not working? How's this going? We're also working to talk to volunteer services as well as the tribe We're making sure to reinforce our outreach to those folks as well. And then we're working to complete the website. We're going on to the next new state standard, so that is a constant work in progress. We hope that right now we're in content harvesting, so we're taking all the content from the current site and moving it into the new site, as well as making sure that all the plugins and modules work. We are also developing a social media strategy, as well as we've begun further refining what this Iowa FirstNet Broadband Summit will look like in 2017. I provided Chair Lampy kind of a hit list of what would a breakdown look like for this 2-day conference, and who would we want to present? How would this look? So we've started going down that road. We're still working on the videos of the ComL ComT, as well as recording the CASM training. We are looking at potentially putting together a FirstNet Iowa video that would be a summary of everything we've accomplished and the process we've gone through. We're working on scheduling some new presentations, as well as finalizing the CASM point of contact report. So that is a summary of what we've been working on as far as outreach. If there's any questions.
So the Wi-Fi, talk about the schools, because you mentioned the 3 schools.
I believe they are Marshalltown, Norwalk, and Martinsdale, I believe.
And for the benefit of the audience as well as board members, could you reiterate what Y Schools is all about?
Y Schools is a program for us to test what it would work like if we turn up the Wi-Fi at the school and allow public safety personnel to use it. So, for example, a school is letting out, or a school is becoming in progress. Public safety law enforcement person could go there, do their reports using the school's Wi-Fi versus using their air card. So they might have a stronger signal, they might be able to process more packets, they can do hopefully a much more rapidly using that level of Wi-Fi access rather than their air card, which, you know, obviously having the school push out the signal, you're probably going to get a much stronger signal and be able to do much more while you're sitting there. So that is kind of a brief summary of what the Y School program is.
In Y School, the Wi-Fi signal is being pushed by ICN.
The ICN, I'm sorry, yes. Our friends at the ICN are a big part of this, and they are helping us, as well as when we go out to the schools, we're going to be looking for the ICN personnel to tell us how this has been going from their end, as well as the schools end, as well as the public safety folks as well.
So as a scenario, for public safety, you're demonstrating the FirstNet, what FirstNet would do for you, because it's truly a public safety only network around the school, which FirstNet is designed for a public safety nationwide network. So you're simulating in a small fashion what FirstNet would do for you, because, for instance, your air card on your computer, running your data, running your video, running streaming, would slow down potentially because of the large response of the commercial side being bogged down. So you're essentially simulating what FirstNet will do for us. So that's the purpose of the program. Right. Okay. Using the ICN's connections that exist already at the schools that are already there. Okay. So you probably have pretty good speed.
That's what we expect. Okay. And that's what we're just waiting for, to get the feedback from the schools and the public safety folks and say, what's your experience? How is this working for you?
I think that's a great way to demonstrate the FirstNet. I also think it's a great way to demonstrate interoperability, and it's also a great way for public safety to be present around schools for deterrence alone. More people using it just for day-to-day stuff, ending their shift, whatever, pull in the parking lot, grab the signal, do your work. I think that's great. Appreciate it.
Question, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Seems to me like you just mentioned what I think is a significant advantage, that is random law enforcement presence at a school, unpredictable presence. Yeah. I think that'd be powerful.
It's huge.
As far as deterrent. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Wally, are you still here? Yes, Mr. Buckner is gone. Wally will take the roll. Training and exercise.
Good afternoon now. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This will be a very brief report as Mr. Buckman has proceeding down his retirement path. The training committee is in a bit of a state of flux right now, as I'm sure we're going to be at some point assigned a new board member as the committee chair. But in the meantime, we did have a conference call this last month, and the three topics really that are on the radar right now are the three upcoming training classes from OEC. The COM-T Train the Trainer was the one that was awarded as a regional award. So of the states in FEMA Region 7, each state is given 2 positions in the class. The class is going to be hosted here in Iowa in West Des Moines. I believe Rob Dennert at Westcom offered that facility to host the class. So people will be coming in to Iowa, to our area, to attend this class. It's possible we may get more than 2 seats if the other states don't have persons to send to occupy those spots. So we're still in the process of identifying who all's going to attend. And it's not it's a board appointed spots basically at this point. The other 2 that have not been decided on a time, the COM-T Train the Trainer is slated right now to start Monday, September 12th, and I believe it runs 5 days. The other 2 that we have been awarded but have not been scheduled is the incident dispatcher training along with the NG 911 workshop. And that was really the open discussion, was how do we find the right time and the right place to hold those. We all know that this summer is going to be extremely busy with the NGA conference is soaking up a lot of time in the planning. Immediately following that, of course, is RAGBRAI, which affects a wide swath of Iowa every year, and the local jurisdiction. We don't want to overlap that and then not have that available while the local entity is has overtime needs to deal with the RAGBRAI. And then of course the state fair comes around in August, and we start getting back to the school. So basically what was discussed on the call was we really need to be looking at the September through November timeline to schedule those classes. So I'm sure there'll be an announcement out as soon as that occurs. So keep a watch for it. Incident dispatcher and NG 911 workshop are the upcoming. And then lastly, we have 2 COM-L candidates here today that will hopefully be in a few moments be officially credentialed in the state of Iowa as communications unit leaders. That's Bill McCall and Clint Miller. If you gentlemen want to step forward, I believe we've got a certificate and a photo opportunity here as we generally do. So, is there before we get on to that part, is there any questions for training? Well, where do you want? Oh, at the podium here? Yes. Or how do you guys want to do that?
This is a certificate of recognition awarded to Billy McCall for completing all requirements of the Iowa Statewide Interoperable Communication Systems Board credentialing program, and thus entitled to be recognized and credentialed in the state of Iowa as a communication unit leader. It's awarded this 12th day of May 2016.
We'll do a photo op here in just a second, Billy.
Second certificate of recognition awarded to Clint Miller for completing all requirements of the Iowa Statewide Interoperable Communication Systems Board credentialing program, and thus entitled to be recognized and credentialed in the state of Iowa as a communications unit leader, also awarded this 15th of May. Thank you.
Thank you.
12th May, sorry. Congratulations.
Got the picture? Okay.
Do you want to grab Tom in the photo?
Sure. Tom, want to come up here and join us?
I couldn't let you off.
Right. In the back.
Yeah, that's right where I belong.
Thanks, guys, congratulations.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Are we back on the phone? We're good? 1 second, we're gonna pause just a second, we've lost our connection on the phone.
Thank you for using the ICN conferencing service. Enter your conference code, followed by the pound or hash sign. Thank you. If you are the leader, press star now. Please enter your leader PIN, followed by the pound. After the tone, state your name, followed by the pound or hash. Thank you. To start or join your conference, press 1. You will now be placed into conference. To mute your line, press star 6. To unmute, press pound 6. After joining the call, to record the conference for those who may miss this call, or for future playback, press star 2.
Okay, we're good to go. Technology.
Okay, first off, May 1st, procedure 2015-04A went into effect. I haven't heard any comments, good or bad. Has anyone out there had any positive or negative feedback? That would be the DCS tone on point-to-point 271.
Patrick, I did receive, I would say 4 phone calls, asking pretty much, what does this mean? And, once it was explained what we were doing, everyone was fine with it. I think there was just a little bit of, ambiguity if they don't track or weren't necessarily aware. Once I brought up the interference piece, then most everyone understood, oh, yeah, we've had that. And so the intent of getting that corrected was good, but yeah, so probably 4 or 5 phone calls.
Okay. All right, so we met on April 28th, the Technology Committee. One of the subjects was the interoperability channels, but it kind of got hung up in the process because Rob Dennert had submitted some documentation from the FCC, which is called FCC Reporting Order 16-48. In this document, the long story made short is that the FCC wants to keep the interoperability and mutual aid channels narrowband analog, but they also wanted to include some of the 800 megahertz channels to be included as narrowbanded. That would be ATAC and VA call channels. So that kind of gave us a little bit of concern about, should we really proceed until we find out for sure if the FCC really means what they say by narrowbanding these 800 megahertz channels. So the information was sent forward to Jim Lundstedt. He did some research, or at least brought back some information that leads us to believe that the FCC is going to amend that document to not narrowband the 800 megahertz channels. Because when they start doing that, it just throws off everything that we're doing when we're trying to develop an IFOG handbook for Iowa. So, out of all of that, we didn't really achieve anything with interoperability channels. So, that was pretty much the end of that. The next agenda item was the P25 LMR fleet mapping. We included Andy Buffington's group. We had a lot of people on the call. Everybody had a lot of input. Rob Dennert is working on his matrix, if you will. I call it the Dennert version 2.0. That should be coming out soon. That document has mathematical calculations, if you will, that helps outline how many users based on population, how much equipment can be put into that area basically. And so this is all just a work in progress, and we will have to report more as the days go by.
Are you getting any pushback? Is anyone bringing up any alternative models for discussion?
I haven't. Rob, have you seen any? I mean,
Yeah.
There's been a number of suggestions as it was vetted through the user group committee and even the technology committee. Several RICs, I think, have looked at it. There's been a number of comments, very good comments, alternatives to it, and that's what's really being incorporated into this second version that we'll get vetted around again and see how it looks.
So it is a distribution of what those limited assets may go, where they may go, and then we are still retaining, or the spirited intent is to still keep about 10% in abeyance for growth or modification of, gosh, we really didn't plan that many users in that spot, school districts or something like that showing up.
Absolutely. There's a reserve in the allocations or the pre-packing. It was much like the 700 to 800 megahertz frequencies were laid out, that it's at least a plan to start from instead of starting with ID 1. There was some plan of how to lay that all out.
No, and I want to applaud Rob's phase 1, or version 1.0, and anything that has come after that, because there was just yeoman's labor that went into it, and the thought processes were all logical, and it's exciting to hear that we're moving down that path, so thank you.
that's it. Thanks.
Thanks, sir. Next item on the agenda under this committee is a subcommittee, Chantel, you're the person at Broadband Subcommittee.
Good afternoon. I'm filling in for Chair Lombard today. At the last FirstNet Broadband Committee meeting, we voted on 2 action items. The first item being for the FirstNet work group to engage in outreach with the tribal entities in Iowa, just to be sure that they're kept informed on all of the progress, on all of the FirstNet progress and process. We met with several individuals from the Sac and Fox tribe last week, also including the FirstNet tribal regional representative, and we answered a few of their questions and also determined that quarterly updates would be scheduled in the future to keep them updated on the FirstNet process. The second action item that the committee voted on was in relation to quality of service, priority, and preemption. The committee established a consultation task force comprised of 5 committee members to interface with FirstNet on any QPP actions or discussions in the future. FirstNet was present for the last committee meeting. We had the regional lead as well as the government affairs representative there for our region, and they reviewed the process leading up to today for FirstNet. They discussed next steps and also answered questions from the committee. So it was a very informative discussion, we believe. Last month I talked a little bit about the opt-in, opt-out task force that the FirstNet Broadband Committee established. They had the responsibility of researching all aspects of opting in or opting out of FirstNet and reporting back to the committee. So that research has concluded, and it's been determined that if FirstNet's state plan does meet the expectations of the state, that the committee is recommending that we go for the opt-in option right now. And Governor Branstad has been updated on the research findings of that task force and preparation for the National Governors Association meeting this upcoming summer. And lastly, the June FirstNet Broadband Committee meeting has been canceled due to summer vacations and lack of quorum. So the next FirstNet Broadband Committee meeting will be on Tuesday, July 5th at the Warren Pate Building.
Okay.
And that concludes the report for Rick.
Well, a couple things. The task force you spoke of to deal with the PPP. And I mentioned this to Rick before. I would ask that we make sure that our RIC chairs are involved on that and to be on that task force with those 5 committee members that volunteered. I would ask them to of the sole reasons we formed the RICS was to get them involved with FirstNet, so they have now a task as FirstNet ramps up.
Absolutely.
Also for the board's information, FirstNet will be at this board meeting in July, so they will be presenting and giving an update, just kind of the same one they did at a FirstNet broadband committee. There's 2 FirstNet officials there last week, so it was very important. Okay, thank you. Okay, we can move on to other reports, information and sharing. Here's where I want to bring up what I said I would here at the beginning of this ISSI committee. In June, at the next board meeting on the new business, you'll see on the agenda, I'd like to form an ISSI committee of from this board, along with some non-members of the board, and be part of the committee, to research the best practices on the ISSI and to research how best to use our ISI solution for connecting our other systems in the state for interoperability, because our main goal is for total interoperability, not to have silos around the state. So during events we can talk to each other through the state system using ISSI to connect each and every one that we can. I would ask that committee to be formed in June, so we'll be putting that on the agenda. I would also ask that committee will leverage the other systems for input on their current how we'll work with the state system. You can remember back in 2009 and 10, this board, it was before my time, that they issued PSIC grants to do with it, that has to do with interoperability. Some of those PSIC grants were awarded funds based on the fact that the new system would be in a reality someday. So those funds were distributed based on that fact, so we'd like to research back into those grants to see how this is all going to work together, because we're here today with that system, so now's the time to talk about it. So I would see that committee working along with the vendor and all vendors to get our solution back the best way we can to make best use of that. So that's what that information is going to be coming forthright. If you have any ideas on who wants to be on the committee, get them to me by June. I will formally announce it in the new business next month. Does anybody else have any questions on that or any other information you'd like to share with the board at this time? Open it up. All right. Is Jim on? Jim Lundstedt, do you happen to be on the phone? I knew you were going to be busy, but I'll give you a couple seconds. I don't believe he's going to be on the phone today. Okay. We'll have an update from our Motorola project manager, Melvin Mercado. You've got the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Give me a couple of seconds here to make sure this is connected.
While he's setting that up, I didn't forget, we were appointed, I was notified we were appointed 4 new board members by the governor. I do not know exactly who that will be now, but there are 4 names that have been selected. So I'll push that information out as soon as they're finalized. We have a spot for representing police, we have a spot for emergency management, communications, and at-large. Okay.
Can you guys see it?
No.
Not yet?
There we go.
All right, well, it's been a pretty busy month, so I wanted to give an update on all the activities and from the perspective of the project plan as well. We talked about before about the critical path, so we're going to talk a little bit about that here as well. So you've seen this project flow diagram before, and the reason we developed this is because we do maintain a Microsoft project file. The project file is huge, and it's very difficult to gain intelligence from it, and especially to put it on a small screen. So we put it this way because it's a lot more logical, and you kind of hide all of those things, and you really focus on the bigger bigger picture items here. So when we look at the critical path, you know, from this diagram before, we had highlighted these arrows here, which were unread, which are critical, right? And they're critical for different reasons. We're gonna talk a little bit about that. But most importantly, as we look at these, we want to kind of talk a little bit about the timeline so we can see how those different pieces affect each other. So the first piece here is that at the end of last year, we staged a system and we shipped it, right? So back in December 29, we shipped the system, and that kind of triggered the rest of the overall process. So starting in January, about the second week of January, we started coordination with the core team from ISICS. And the core focus of that has been site development, and site development continues to be a big piece of that, even though we're looking and talking about all sorts of other things. But site development being here, as you can see, right in the middle of that line, is the core critical path, right? Because without sites, nothing else really matters, okay? So as we move forward, starting on February, towards the end of February, we started having these DDRs, the engineering DDRs. So on February 26th, we started the first one, and we had 4 ever since. And we plan on having a long session. We're still working on putting all that together. But basically, by the end of June or beginning of July, as you can see here, we will be done with the DDRs. So at that point, we will have considered the different things to consider, have all the different modifications, and looked at how we have to adjust, and we can continue forward. The important thing here is that this ends, we're looking at targeting that for the beginning of July, but when you look at the site development process, we're going to talk a little bit about this. This is way ahead before this piece ever gets done. So for that reason, this piece remains a critical path as opposed to this one. In addition, we're looking at the later portion of the year, mainly after the NGA, to start the formal meetings with the, what we call the optimization detailed design review. And the great thing about this is that it's great to hear that you have your technical subcommittees and your groups forming and already talking about all these different things, because all that stuff will be the kind of topics that will feed into this, which has to deal with how do we program the radios, what kind of topics do we have for interoperability, all those kinds of things are very critical. The segmentation of the IDs and all those different pieces. So we put that until after the NGA, because we've been really focusing hard and getting a lot of things ready for the NGA, which is a really huge milestone for us. So I wanted to focus on this piece here, the site development detailed design review. But one thing to consider is that even though we talk about the site development, you know, all of this piece in here, which has to do with the insulation, the microwave, and all these things, we're talking about the completion by the end of 2017, but it doesn't mean that none of this stuff gets done until 2017. And that's why it's hard to look at it if you look at the Microsoft project file, because we have many things happening at different times in the overall process. So what I want to do today is I wanted to take a look at this piece in here, which is where all of our focus is. So if I isolate that, and we did filtering in our Microsoft project file, so we brought it up, zoom it up a little bit there. So a couple of things I wanted you to see here is that there's different pieces to this. So right now, what I'm highlighting here is a pre-construction portion of the site development, or the A&E. And there's different pieces to this, and we'll talk about these steps later. But right now, this is all about identifying the sites, walking the sites, confirming the viability of the sites, and having folks review what we found. So we put preliminary drawings together so that folks can review it and give us some feedback before we move into the formalized process and putting the applications and the permitting and whatnot. It's a lengthy process and it's somewhat painful, because you have to really get down to identifying the right folks so that you can get valid feedback. So in here, the way we structured this is, with Microsoft Project, you can sort through different things. And so what we see here is that we have highlighted in red are the items that are right now in the critical path. And these are just, as the schedule moves around, and as we update, things become highlighted red so that we see that, oh, that got thrown into the critical path, okay? So as we move forward, a couple of things I want to show here. So what we've done is we segmented this just to categorize it. So we have DPS and DOT locations. So we spend a lot of time identifying the point of contact. Who is the actual person that should be giving us the feedback? So we started way at the top, and in a lot of cases we went down 5 different layers. So just getting to that point was a lot of work, okay? So we started through that process, and we have these completed as we show over here, right? So we started back on January, and towards the end of January or the middle of February, we were done. It took a lot of time just identifying the right people, okay? Then we did the sidewalks, and then we started reviewing the construction drawings. So instead of going into all this stuff, which can put anybody to sleep, what I did was I took this and I translated that into a visual representation of what it really means, okay? So this is that brown box that we talked about, the site development DDR. So that's this box over here. And specifically, we're looking at this piece over here, which is all the A&E work, okay? So the way this works is, again, here's where DPS sites, DOT sites, and others. We want to really focus on these 2 because others, it's kind of complex. It has to do with lease sites, with anchor tenants and whatnot. So some of these numbers down here can be somewhat misleading. But up here, we look at DPS sites. We have a total of 21 sites that are DPS sites, and we have 42 sites that are DOT, almost, actually they double. So we can see here that we've identified, right, 100% of the point of contacts. We've done the site walks, and we produced preliminary CDs, which are construction drawings. So these are where our architecture and engineering firm does the surveys of the sites, and they do the big sheets where it shows where the shelter is, where the tower is, the kind of stuff that's important because it's the beginning stage for the permitting. So I want to focus on those 2, so I just took the bottom one out. I'm going to zoom there a little bit so I can have a little bit more space. So what I'm showing here is, again, from the other Microsoft project file that you saw, that by the 25th of January we had the point of contacts for DPS identified, and by roughly the middle of February we had the DOT contacts identified. So we did site walks, and we completed site walks for both of them. So from there we went to generating these preliminary drawings. So over here we have the drawings. So for the DPS sites, we had the drawings completed by the 4th of March. And for DOT, we had them completed by the 18th. So roughly between beginning of March and roughly the middle of March, we had all the CDs completed, uploaded in the shared drive so people can start reviewing them, okay? So we've completed the review process for DOT. Okay, before we go there, one thing I wanted to show is that this process took longer than anticipated, so we accelerated our A&E. So from the 29th to the 4th, which is a week, we were able to generate 21 construction drawings for the DPS site. So we had a little army of people working on these things because we wanted to try to keep this side as close as possible to what we really envisioned. Same deal we did down here. So again, this took an extra week because we had twice the number of sites. So by the 14th of March, we had all of the DPS sites reviewed, and we're currently at 62% with the DOT sites. So we're shooting for having that completed by this month, on the 20th of this month. There's a significant lag between the two. I think that's probably been resolved by now, so we can start moving forward. So that's why this number is red, because this is what we're projecting, that's what our target is. So everything out over here is 0% because we can't get any of this stuff done until we get the reviews in place so we can start moving forward. Otherwise, we can burn a lot of dollars and effort doing stuff that might probably change. Okay? So one of the things I wanted to note here, as you see this line here, is that there is, we're starting moving forward with the zoning approval process. So we didn't start back in the 14th because it was critical for us that we had the state, from a coordination perspective, be able to support the project. So it's not just Joe Schmo from some company that's going out to all the local jurisdictions saying, hey, we need to do all this stuff, right? Otherwise, we would be no different than anybody else who's doing a construction project, and it'd take a lot longer to get anything done. So we coordinated with the state, and this went through the Attorney General's office as well to issue this letter, which was issued about a week ago. And then based on that, we were able to get started. So we have right now, once we got that letter, our A&E partners started on the 9th to make phone calls. So we have like phone banks, and all of these guys are calling all these different jurisdictions where all these sites resides, and they start the conversation with, they forward the letter that was sent already, they make reference to the letter, and some information packet that also was made by the Attorney General's office as well. And all of that stuff is what's allowed us to move forward, so that we're not just strangers, but that we're people here in a way representing the ISICS board, because we need to get moving with this project. So the tone and the level of cooperation drastically changes when we do this kind of stuff. Otherwise, it's just paperwork that gets lost in the process. So based on the timing, we're talking about getting this completed by the 27th of this month. So by the end of this month, we're looking at least for all the DPS sites, to having gone through the zoning approval. And that, what it really boils down to is that we're going to look at any zoning variances that we may need that are identified and work with those entities to resolve that. And that's the biggest challenge. Whereas for the DOT sites, we need some extra time because we still don't have all the pieces in place. So this date of June 10 is projected based on completing the review by the 20th of this month. So once that's completed, the plan is, or the way it works is that once we get the zoning approval, we make any modifications necessary to the construction drawing that was reviewed here. So in this case, this drawing that we generated was reviewed. So we go to zoning based on the reviewed document, and if the zoning says, no, you gotta do this, that, or the other, then we do some modifications to that. But at least at that point, we're clear as to where we really stand, and then we go and produce these stamped construction drawings, which then we go to what I show here as the civil DDR, which is the formal detailed design review. So at this point, we come to the group that's going to be reviewing these documents, say here it is stamped with all the details that you really need to take a look at, so that you can approve, so that we're good to go. While that's happening, there's a regulatory process up here that I show, and that's where you do all the environmental studies, the wildlife studies, the SHPO, the historical studies. You look for all sorts of things, and that's the process that takes the longest. So while that is taking process up here, while that's moving along, because we basically submit all the paperwork and then you just literally wait. So in the meantime, we're going to be reviewing with the groups here on these DDRs, all these stamped drawings, so that by the time we get the regulatory approvals in place, we're good to go. So the plan here is that once that happens, this is a notice to proceed over here. So that's the output of that process. That's where you tell us, okay, everything is good. We've approved these. You got the approval from up here, so you're good to start construction. That's when we start That's where we put the first shovel in the ground and start digging. So a couple of things I want to show, and this can be a little bit scary, right? So you look at this, again, you say February of 2017, right? Well, what that means is that's the worst case. So that means that there's at least one site out there that's going to start on February 17. The reality, there's a lot of work that's going to start this year, right? So when I look over here, for example, here's a regulatory process, right? So we're looking at zoning approval. So here's DPS, DOC, and DNR locations, right? So we're looking at down here for these guys here. Now, the reason for these guys being so soon in this year is because we have a lot of sites that are already in existence. So the existing sites we can attack relatively quickly. It's the greenfield sites where we got to build a tower or we got to put a shelter. Those are a lot more complicated. So you see, like down here, we show DPS locations existing, right? So we show that in June. We show a greenfield site. Well, we show some of those all the way over there. Now, what that represents is that represents worst case condition, right? So we got to assume that it's going to take 3 months to make it through a NEPA application and maybe some additional time for the SHPOs. But sometimes they come back a lot quicker, right? So, but we have to project based on historical reference what that normally is. So when we look at that, I throw these dates back in here, and you look at again. Here's a 2/20 of 17, right? And you get the impression, oh my goodness, that means none of this is going to happen. Well, that's not really the case, right? But the important thing here, the reason I'm showing this here is that all this stuff, the overall project in terms of construction, we're talking towards the end of 17, and here we're talking about entering this stuff in the middle of this year. That means that you have a lot of buffer between here and here. That's why this is not a critical path, even though it's red, because if things went bad and it prolonged, it could become a critical path, right? Same deal down here with the optimization. This is way over here. Okay. Now, in reality, what I'm showing here in this diagram here is that a lot of this stuff is actually happening even right now. So even though we show it as linear here, there's a lot of this stuff is happening in parallel just because all the things that we're trying to do at the same time, plus the fact that we're dealing with the NGA as well, right? So we have to consider all these things. So that's why if you just look at the project file, it gets really, really hard to follow. So here, that's why I make reference to the NGA event. So a couple of things for you to be aware of, which are major actions by the end of this month. So we have a simulcast cell that we've installed, or we're in the process of installing in the capital area in downtown Des Moines. So by the end of this month, that simulcast cell will be installed, and that's critical for supporting the NGA as well. We're also looking at completing integration of Westcom into the ISICS core as well by the end of this month. And that's a significant milestone for us as well. We're also looking at the dispatch for Des Moines, which is in JFHQ. We're going to be able to integrate that into the ISICS as well. And by the end of this month, we'll have the simulcast cell in the capital area, which I call Des Moines, and the West Des Moines system, Westcom, interconnected so that there will be interoperability and operability as a small regional system as a starting point for ISICS. And that's significant because what that means is that by the end of this month, ISICS will be up in operation, right? Even though it's a smaller starting point because we're starting in the middle of the state, it's a significant milestone because it allows us to start projecting forward from there. So these are the tables that we show every month, and you know, these will be available right online. So you know, these will be posted. So I wasn't sure if we really care to go through this right now. The important thing was that, you know, again, that we've done all of these site visits. We've had NEPAs and SHPOs, you know, that need to be submitted, and these are some of the numbers. We got migratory bird, public notices, structural analysis. So it's just an ongoing effort for every region. In some cases, we've had towers that have failed loading analysis, so we do a modification analysis that tells us what has to be done to the tower in order to make sure that it supports the additional load. So these will be posted as well. That's all I had. Any questions?
Melvin, based on where the project is right now, what's your biggest concern?
The concern continues to be site availability. So as we move forward, some of the initial problems that we had was that some of the agencies involved didn't know how their involvement would fit into the overall process. So it requires some communication from the commissioner's office to make sure that everybody is cooperating with the deployment of the system. You know, there's an expectation of some interagency agreements to be in place or something, whereas we don't deal with the agencies per se, we deal with the state because everything is under state agencies. Yeah.
Right. Beyond that, what concerns do you have at this point that the board should be aware of?
It's all about site availability.
Okay.
Did any of those sites include the Department of Corrections?
Yeah, there are some DOC sites, that's correct.
But is DOC giving you any pushback? Any issues?
I'm not aware of DOC being one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just let me know if there is.
I know that we had some concerns and some issues with some of the bigger towers that we want to use, which were IPTV towers. So we're looking into that to see how we can resolve some of those.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Melvin.
Sure. Move on to business governance, back to you. Okay, thank you. I request my fellow committee chairs to take the administrative rule review to your groups and report back to me in writing, hopefully, on what you've done. We talked about this a couple times. And appreciate any responses that you have about the comments you have from your staff. At the last governance committee meeting, we talked about term limits or rotational processes on committees, on the UGC committee and on the RICS. I would be very interested in hearing and having you talk to your groups, your own groups, about what they think about that and comment back. The governance committee is of the opinion that it's probably healthy to have a rotational process, probably a 3-year rotational process for the user group committee. So it'd be 6 rotations, have a third of the committee rotate off. So we get 18 people, but 6 of them are the RIC chairs. So we think it'd be useful to have a 3-year rotational process for turnovers on the user group committee. We think the same thing would also be healthy at the RIC level. Bring new people in, keep people for several years, and just kind of keep going through a rotation. It doesn't mean that you're on once and can never come on again. You just have to be off for a period of time, in our opinion. And at some point in time, we think it'd be appropriate to have a protocol statement to discuss these things. Do the board members have any comments that you'd like to express at this time on a rotational process?
So there's no concern with a 3-year cycle, 3-year staggered cycle. Right, go ahead.
You know, anyway, there should be some sort of rotation, that you're right on that. I would just, I would make sure that when you start to rotate your RICs, look at the people you have in RIC position now, or positions. Finding that type of leadership is not gonna be as easy as finding participation in the group. So that's the only downside about that, so make sure that, I mean, I wouldn't bring them on a 3-year rotation necessarily either. You might hit it right, but you're also looking at all that number of leaders. So my only hesitation would be to think that you're going to end up putting somebody in there just because that maybe is a warm body. You see that all the time that happens. I mean, that's one of the government's biggest problems.
Right, that's one of the things that we've talked about, and it's one of the things that as this gets digested, and it's unfortunate that Terry left, because this is kind of the topic that I think he was.
And I'm purely talking about the leadership role.
Right.
I'm not talking about the warm bodies below, because there's a lot of things you can gather from different people and committee membership. I'm talking about from a leadership position.
Yeah.
So just whatever it is, I just want to make sure that, and I know you are, Bob, I'm sure you are, but rotation is not a bad thing. It's just a simple fact that you also don't want to get in a situation where all of a sudden you don't have leader quality individuals, and now who are we going to put in there because it's time for that person to rotate off. That's what I'm trying to say.
And it depends when you're gonna start your rotation.
Well, see, we've already got the RIC chairs have already been established, so you've kind of selected some of that, and so as that is a bit of a mathematical scheme. So you either start with shorter or longer terms to get that stagger initially.
I'm thinking we're not up and running. I'd hate to lose one before we're all in effect.
I think those are all good points. I categorize those under all these things that we talk about, on committee two, under the heading of sustainability. We have to have something that we can sustain, something that's gonna work. Your points are all very well taken. All of us on this board, for example, are well, not everybody, but the public representatives have a 3 rotational period. You might or may not get reappointed. And I think that presents its own set of problems. People come in, they don't know quite as much as the people who have been here for a while, and you got a learning curve, and you go on maybe, and maybe you get reappointed, maybe you don't. So it's the point that Ted and Ellen are making. We need to think through this. That's why the governance committee is not ready to make a recommendation yet. We'd like to mature this discussion. We see some advantages. In fact, we see a number of advantages to keep new people coming in. But then the questions are, how do you keep it moving? How do you sustain it? And it's difficult. And maybe 3 years isn't the right number. Maybe we'll wait a while to start. Maybe wait until we get moving and get some motion, get things in motion, and until we have a process we can sustain. So that's why I'd appreciate discussions amongst your own group, our own groups. We're going to bring this back, and I think we're going to bring this back next month for more discussion. And at some point in time, I think we'll be ready to move on, and I'm not sure when that's going to be, but I don't want to just ram something through until we're ready to all of us feel comfortable doing something.
I like Ted's warm body. I feel like I'm a warm body. It's like, oh my gosh. So yeah, you gotta be on there a while to figure out what's going on.
That is a very important, highly technical, specialized committee. It's the first step. Second step to join the system.
All you have to do is think how many are active currently in Iowa. There's not that many. This isn't New York City or California, So it's going to get to a point where you're going to have to watch. And again, I talk from the leadership roles is what I'm talking about. So.
Is there anything that would prevent the UGC committee from moving forward based on what you're doing?
Is your question establishing a rotational process in the UGC immediately? Is that what your question is?
Yes.
Yes, I think there is something that would not support that. And I think, in my opinion, the governance committee is recommending to this board continued discussion. Let the concept mature. There's nothing that says we can't do it, but the governance committee is not recommending that we're ready to start it.
The reason I'm asking is under the next section under new business, we do have 2 counties that have submitted intent by email to me, but not a formal letter to join the system. If we can't established enough now to approve Dallas County to come on? Because I have an email.
Yes, it is. There's not a problem whatsoever going ahead, in my opinion, but maybe that's a question for the rest of the board members. So the committee size, it can be up to 18. There's nothing says that you can't do it with 5 or 2 or 1.
Okay.
The committee's the committee as it's structured right now.
So in
terms
terms
of
of, the term limit has no effect on what they need, their task now.
That is correct,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right.
And that is the extent of my report. Thank you.
Okay, then moving on to new business, bring back to Dallas County. I do have an email from Terry McClanahan from Dallas County that they wish to join the system. We'll probably get them a sample letter of some type, so they could use, and then we'll push that back through quickly to get it done, to start that process. Woodbury County is also in the wings waiting for the same thing. So those 2 counties will be coming on soon here. So the use group committee will have their first 2 applicants here very shortly. Any questions on that? So much for our hour and a half meeting. Public comment, open it up. Is there any questions?
All 6 of you that stayed around.
Yeah. Okay, I have a motion for adjournment.
So move.